Hi everybody, I hope you are able to see me, and thanks for joining this session. So today I will talk about the digitalization of the procurement and specifically, everything about supplier experience. First of all, let me introduce myself. So I'm Stephane Sacherer. I'm part of the global strategy and capability team at Mondelez, and I'm the business process owner for the Procure to Pay. In this session, I will first talk about our digitalization journey and how we have put that in place at Mondelez. Then we have a tool called Supplier Central, which is our way to manage suppliers. So I will explain why we wanted to have a change and what was the objective to have a new solution. Then how we implemented that tool, and then giving you 2 or 3 tips about the digitalization and what are the key learning we can have from there. First, about our digitalization journey. The first things that we have done, it's part of a global transformation on the procurement area. So on the procurement side, what we wanted to do is to really improve our way of working, optimize our way of working, and really transform and be more productive as a procurement organization. As part of that, we have created a big project 3 years ago when we manage both, the way of working of the buyers, but also to look at the different tools that we needed to be successful. In that project, that was a project that was including sourcing, way of working, that was including also innovation. That's a project which has been presented by the CPO to the C-level and what was approved at the C-level. And in that big project, there was also change in tools and processes to be more efficient. And what you can see here is that we have mainly 3 main tools that we have decided to implement. The first one, Supplier Central, that's the one I will talk a little bit more later, which is to be able to get one portal for our supplier to be able to connect to Mondelez, make sure we have one single repository and source of truth, and also make sure that we have a better way to collaborate with the supplier. So not only exchange data, but also a lot of more information and collaboration in both directions. We also implemented a second tool, which is called Buyer Central, and that's a tool which was really centered on the buyer and make sure that we can give them in one application all the information they need to have for their day-to-day activities. And what we have done there is that there is a workflow in place, there is all their tasks that they have to do, there is template to do the RFPs, for example, and so on, and making sure that we can really put all of that together so that the buyer has an easier way to do their work. The last thing, which I think is important now for all the companies, I call that Data Central, is really review our data way of working, creating a data lake with all the information related to procurement and other functions, and be able to set up a central visualization tool that all the buyers are aware of and are able to use the same tool all the time. So that's making sure that with that, we can share the information the same way. The information is always appearing in the same format, so that's making the exchange much more easy between the different users. Now, if I dig a little bit on Supplier Central and why we decided that was a key initiative for Mondelez. The most important was that our process to manage our supplier before was very slow. If we look on process side, there was a lot of effort involved on that. It was complex. We didn't have a single source of data. We have multiple ERP, and that was very difficult to link all of that together. We have also no way to share information, even sensitive, in a better way than just email with the supplier. So that was one of the issues. In terms of technology, we didn't have a lot, to be honest, on that. The creation of the supplier, for example, was done through Excel spreadsheet, which of course it's not the best you can imagine, and so we needed to have a better solution for us to manage that. In terms of people, we were spending a lot of time on creating the supplier, maintaining, and the buyer was a little bit the middleman all the time. So if the supplier wanted to change something, they are going to the buyer. The buyer has to go to our share service center to create or to change something. So that was a lot of waste of time for the buyer, and we thought there was probably a better way to manage that. So the objective we have with our solution was to really change that and to have one central portal where both the buyer and the supplier would be able to connect and share information together. First of all, the most important was to get a self-service to our suppliers. So make sure that, if they want to change data, if they want even to create their profile in our system, they can do that themselves. They know their own data. They are less likely to make mistake because again, they know what they are doing. So for us, that was a key starting point for that. Make sure as well we have a consolidation point in this single portal. So making sure that we will not have, like today, 3 or 4 ERPs, but being able to manage the supplier in one place with one record for the supplier, even if that record has to be pushed in different systems later on. And the last piece on the process side is that be able for the procurement to have access directly on the detail on the supplier. In most of and I've seen that with other companies, is that the buyer usually are not connected to the ERP, or at least not regularly, because that's more for the transactional part and not for the negotiation, the contracting, and so on. Being able to give them an access to the supplier data with, for example, the payment term, the address, the contact detail of the supplier, is really helping to make sure that we can manage our process much more efficiently. In terms of technology, so I mentioned we wanted one single portal. We wanted to simplify the way we request the creation of the supplier. We wanted a tool that will be our source of truth, so really a central data repository. And we wanted also to be able to share and to have a place when we can share document with the suppliers. In terms of the people side, we wanted to increase the accountability of the supplier on their data so that they are able to see them, but also be able to update them and make sure that they are up to date on a secure way. We wanted to decrease the time for the user, especially our buyers, so that they can spend more time, in negotiation, in added productivity. And we wanted also to reduce the number of errors, because instead of creating or retyping data several times with the Excel spreadsheet to other ways and so on, is to be able to have a tool that will automatically connect to all the other systems, so that will be all automated. So that was a big challenge and a big expectation from the tool. So if I look now of what we have done, and we have selected X as the platform for our Supplier Central solution. That's a project that started in October 2019. We were able to be very quick on the design and prototyping. That's because we had a clear view of our processes, and we were able to meet with the developers very quickly, be able to bring all the knowledge of what we wanted to do together. And before the end of 2019, we already have the first prototype when we were starting to test the way it was working. As soon as we have done that, we have been able then to go live. And we went live in May 2020 for the America region. And then we finish all our go live by September 2020. So in 1 year, we have implemented the full solution globally, in 75 countries. The only thing we haven't done at that time is the SAP integration, and that was on purpose. We have the choice to do integration at the same time, but as we wanted to make sure we will have a good integration with SAP that we use as an ERP. What we wanted to do is to first, as the process working as a standalone, make sure that we look at everything, validate that all the data were correct. So the system was giving us as an output all the data that we're planning to upload in SAP. And when we have made sure that everything was correct, that's where we started the integration, and that's starting end of 2020. So I think the first integration was in October 2020. and we finished with all the region in June 2021. So we have now, since few months, the system fully operational with user requesting the creation of the supplier entering their own data, and then the data after validation being sent directly to all our ERP system. In terms of the team that we have, because that's something that's coming very often, how many people do you need to do those type of projects? We are usually, in the way we work, pretty light on our team. So we had one project manager that was running the project, the timing and the deliverables and the requirement in terms of compliance. We had 3 SMEs that were not full-time. Most of them was roughly 70-80% of their time on the project. We had one change manager, which was less than 50%, but really to make sure that we communicate properly. And then we have one consultant plus some developer from the X side. We also use a regional change support team that we have. So we have people in the region to help us to communicate and to help on setting up the trainings and things like that for our user. But the result is already quite great. If you look at it, so we have all the suppliers that we use today already in the tool. Now, all the suppliers are not connected. So, we have more than 80,000 suppliers in Mondelez that are active. On those 80,000, we have already more than 10,000 suppliers which are already connected to the system and that can, connect themselves, change their data. On those 10,000 suppliers, that's representing more than 15,000 users. So, the supplier are able to connect more than one user in the system, and we even recommend that, so that if someone leaving, we can have someone else that we can contact if needed. And we see that every month we have more than 2,500 users from the supplier connected. So we have roughly, if you look at the 10,000, a fourth of our supplier, which every month going to the system to look at their data, and I will show you why is that, but we expect that to continue to grow. And that's important because if you want your data to be accurate, we need to make sure the supplier are going to your tools, because if they are not going to the tool, then they will not be able to see that, for example, someone left the company or that they changed their address and things like that. So for us, it's very, very positive. On our business size, we have more than 4,000 users, and we have more than 1,500 a month connected. And that could be to validate, to request a new supplier, validate a supplier, or just look at their data, look at the payment term for a supplier or things like that. So very, very encouraging on that area. That number will probably stay more or less as is, but again, the number of suppliers will continue to grow. Now, as I said at the beginning, the objective was not only to have a tool to manage the data, but also to start sharing and collaborate much more with the supplier. One of the key things we are doing, and that's going fully live this month, is to share the scorecard with the supplier. So, all our supplier, and specifically on the direct materials side, we are doing some scorecarding, performance with for example, the OTIF, on time in full, delivery compliance, with the quality notification. So, did we have any quality issue and things like that. And for the moment, those information was shared quarterly or yearly with the supplier, depending on the size of the supplier. Well, with that process, the scorecard will be online all the time. And they will be refreshed every day based on the new delivery, based on new quality notification that we have received and things like that. So the supplier will be able to see exactly, what is the perception on the Mondelez side of what we are delivering. And the objective of that is to have a better work between the buyer and the supplier, and also to be able to address an issue much more earlier than that quarterly review or that yearly review. So by doing that, the supplier can see, if they miss a delivery or something like that, can understand up front, or can check with them what happened and make sure that will not happen again. And that gives the same data exactly for the supplier and for the buyer. The buyer see exactly the same information. And that's really ensuring, that we work on improving the performance instead of discussing about the number themselves. We also started to work on sustainability data collection. I think in most of our companies now, sustainability is super important. There is commitment made on the market on what we want to do. And for us, gathering the data in a standard way and in an efficient way to all our suppliers, For example, what the percentage of organic material they are creating, and all those type of things is super important. And we use now our Supplier Central portal to make sure we do that from there. We just started, so we have started with the dairy, but we are now working with the oil and fat, and we will continue to increase. We are working with the wheat as well. So we try to increase that as much as we can, because that's a standard way to do it. We can send the questionnaire, to the supplier once a year, once a month if we want to, just to make sure that they can give us the right data for a sustainability plan. One thing which is important and which explaining why suppliers are connecting also a lot is we gave them the access to invoice status. So now if you are a supplier, you don't know if we have received your invoice, you don't know when you will be paid, you can go straight to invoice status, you can type your invoice or see all your invoice, and we give you, when you are expected to be paid. And that's decreasing significantly, the request to our accounts payables team and support. Because supplier, most of the time, what they want to know is, do you have my invoice and when will I be paid? So all of that is now directly at the fingertip of the supplier, and that's a big help to push the supplier to use the tool and to come regularly to ensure they will make their data up to date. What we do as well is start to share policies and get acknowledgement for that. One of the key things is making sure that, especially when you change your policies, and that can be quality, compliance policies, cybersecurity policies, and things like that. You want to make sure that the supplier have seen those policies and that will work with those policies. So what we have in the tool is the possibility to send the policies and get an acknowledgement to the supplier to say, yes, I received it and I read it. So I think that's a key element for us to ensure that the supplier has the right information, and that we extend, if you want, the policies and the management of the data to the supplier as well. In terms of KPI, quickly, we have seen some great improvement in the supplier creation, depending on the region. Some region was taking up to 3 or 4 weeks to create a supplier. We are now in average globally for the program at less than 11 days, and we're still working to reduce that a little bit more. So great gain in terms of how quickly we can create supplier in the system. We have also time to change a request. When someone or a supplier requests to make a change is now around 3 days. So we can get very, very quickly. Again, we need a time first to receive it. We need an approval of the change, and then it's automatically going to our ERP. One thing which was very important for us is the request rejection. So when you use Excel, for example, to create a supplier and things like that, there is a lot of things that might not be right. You might have not attached the right document, you can have mistyped things or not enter the right information. And with the old tools and process, we had an average 12% of the requests which was rejected back to the user. And what that meant is that, for those users, they have to rework, redo the things, re-ask the supplier for the information and things like that. And of course, that was taking a lot of their time. With the tool, with the validation we have in the tool, with the fact that we are more precise of what we ask to the supplier, we managed to get to less than 1%, which is, again, a great improvement from our side. In terms of business adoption, again, we have been able to move to the tool fully. So, I put 99 plus because we still have few areas when we want to, we accept exception. But overall, all the company is now using the tool to create and manage supplier and communicate with the supplier. That's, again, something which is very important, because to be successful, we need to have the push for all the company. That was an initiative, again, at the top level, and we really pushed that. And now the user knows that if they don't use the tool, there is a good chance that will take a lot of time to make a change or to have their supplier created. So that was a very good help for us. Last slide, some of the key learning. The first one, I suppose that you see that in any project or transformation that you do is look at your data first. Try to standardize and to cleanse the data. We've done a lot before the project. We also done a lot in the project, and we know that we still have a lot to do after that. What is very important on that first point is, and if you think of the digitalization, is that suddenly your data become available and visible by everybody. If you think about that, when you have your data, your master data in your ERP, you have only the expert which are looking at it time to time, and they don't care if it's something is not really fully great, fully right, because that's not creating any issue for the transaction. If but when you start to show those information to all the buyers, to all your user, and I have a lot of people in Mondelez outside of the procurement organization having access to that, then suddenly people see, oh, that thing is missing. Oh, that thing is not fully right. So you have a lot of feedback and changes to be made. And also when you think about, having one central system, if you have multiple ERPs and you manage things differently in the ERPs, then you start to have issues because you will have, for example, your coding for payment term might be different from one system to the other. Well, how you manage that, in the tool, so to make it easy for your user. So there is a lot of standardization, and of course, the transformation is also helping to do those standardization, which is great because the better the data are, the better we are. The second point is the supplier are not often tech savvy. So that's important because suddenly your supplier access directly to your tool. They have access to supplier portal, they're able to change their data and so on. And you need to make sure you have your support in place. We had a support in place already for accounts receivable, for accounts payable, sorry, and we extended it a little bit to be able to also take care of question from the supplier. But that's super important. What we have seen as well is that speaking their language, in the rare case when really you see the person not really understanding what you want, it's important. So we have a way, if you want to, first of all, we support 13 languages via email, which is already great. And then if we have issues, if we find out that we need to talk to the supplier, then we contact someone in their own language to make sure they have the right discussion and be able to solve any issue that they have. The last one is a positive one, but a stressful one, is that the user see very quickly the interest of the tool. I receive more or less every week a request of someone saying, well, I'm planning to do that with the supplier. Can I use Supplier Central to do that? Or I need to send a questionnaire about the GMO legislation for my supplier in North America, in US, because there's a new legal requirement. Can I use Supplier Central to do that? So the different, the buyers and also research and development, which is also looking at the specification and things like that, they come with requests all the time to be able to push that in the tool because they understood the power of having one tool to communicate with the supplier. That's great, but for the moment, for example, we have a backlog of things that they want us to do just because there is too many. So that's important. I'm looking and I'm working with the team to try to increase a little bit the capacity so that we can start to push a little bit more. But that's giving a very good view or how people can adapt, use, and really push, the functionality as soon as you give them something different than what we have in the past. And that's the end. So I'm sorry, I was not looking at the chat, so I don't know if you have any question in the chat or if someone want to ask any question. So I would just take the one I see in the Q&A session concerning the performance. So we have the tool itself is not creating the data, is not creating the data for the performance. So we capture the performance in different ways. First of all, we use our ERPs to, for example, for the on time in full, we have data directly from the ERP on when the good receipt was done and the quantity that was received versus what we have in the PO on the scheduled receipt. This is done so directly in the ERP. We are using, and you remember I show you the data central at the beginning. So in the data central, in the database, we have all those information, and we generate a report directly in our tool. So we use Power BI for that. And then we use that Power BI to share with the supplier. So the supplier is the user, so the buyer are looking directly in Power BI, and the supplier are looking through Supplier Central. They have access as well to the same view as the buyer will see, so they can see all their different quality. So the data for quality notification is something that is done directly by RD&Q team, so the quality team. And that's something which is again stored in the database and that we can then share with our suppliers. So in terms of invoice management and invoice automation, we are currently using Kofax on top of SAP to manage all the workflow and the approval. And then we have one standard reporting, which is done out of the tool, which is giving us all the invoices with their date of payment, date of receipt, date of payment, expected date of payment. So that's all included in that process. And again, we have one standard reporting that we extract from our ERP, so that we can have, and that's done every day. So every day we update the data for our user. So in terms of connectivity to transaction P2P, it's connected, but only on data. So Supplier Central, the objective is really only to get the data from the supplier and the connectivity for the supplier. Our plan is to share the POs to the supplier in the future, and that will be done very soon, probably early next year. For the moment, we connect to the P2P to have all the payment term, all the SAP data that you need to be able to create POs and things like that. All that is connected. But then concerning the metrics, it's usually all sent to the data central, so to our data lake. So then we can have report out of that, and in the future we will continue to share more, performance metrics potentially on more P2P applications, so directly with our supplier. So challenge with supplier adoption. That's a good question. It's not easy. First of all, that has to be a clear mandate for the company. So we have a clear mandate now to have all our supplier using Supplier Central. As you have seen, we have probably 15% for the moment of our supplier connected. What we have done is we had a strategy to say, well, let's try not to boil the ocean and try to create all the supplier or to connect all the supplier at the same time, because the key things is to make sure you know their contact for the supplier. And if you think on the buyer world, all the big supplier above 1 million, they know their contact, they're contacting them, once a quarter, once a year. So for them, that's pretty easy. But for all the other one, it's a little bit more difficult because, that's going straight to the requester and things like that. So we have started with all the big one above 1 million. And for those one, we have already more than 50%, 60% of those suppliers are already in the tool and active. And we are working with the others. So I have one person which is part of the project, which is helping the buyers, to contact the supplier and so on. We have put a big mandate in the way we address the supplier, and we see big progress on that. I would prefer to go quicker, but again, we need to also manage the workload linked to that and so on. So our objective is to have all the supplier representing 80% of the spend be in the system probably by the end of this year, early next year. And then automatically, each new creation of a supplier is automatically automatically having to use the tool. So automatically, if you want, the number is increasing because the system will force the new supplier to go through the tool. The last question I see is what were the key challenges for implementing? One of the key one is really the change management, internally and externally. I just talked about the supplier and how to explain how to use the tool and so on. Internally, we have done also a lot of communication. Even if the tool is easier and people who are using it, feel that it's easier, it's a change compared to the previous process. So as usual, when you have a change, you need to make sure you communicate. So that was probably the biggest one. The second one I will mention is that in our free ERP system, we have one, the America instance, where the setup of the vendor is different than the other one. That's an historical reason, but that means we have to adapt our process in the portal to be able to manage that specificity. So that has created a little bit of more work to ensure that everything was correct. But after reviewing and working with the X team, understanding how that process worked, how it was different from the other, we have been able to implement that, and we have now the process. Again, I'm still able to get one supplier record that is pushed then to the free system, but the way it's pushed to two of the system is different to what we do for the American instance. I'm just going back up now. I see a question about the funding. So it is totally free for the suppliers. We didn't, if you want the supplier to go to your tool and to use it, we didn't want to have a burden of asking them to pay for that. So we are paying for the portal totally. The supplier is free to join it. It's just to make sure that they can be connected to the system and that we can collaborate better. Again, we have a lot of vision of new things we want to do with them. So for us, it's very important that they are in. So we don't want to have suppliers say, well, you asked me to pay, so I prefer to opt out. And if you pay, it's also difficult to mandate that to all your suppliers. You can always mandate for your big one, but for small one, it's more difficult. Where having a free option, it's much more easy to manage that. I think I have done all the question in the Q&A. So I think we will close out the session. I'm not sure, I don't have a timer directly in front of me, but I suppose we are more or less at the end of the session. So thank you very much for those who joined the session, and continue to have a great DPW 2021. And if you ask more questions, that will be bring back to me, so I will be able to answer if you have any other question. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.